Happy Hangover Day, everybody. This is the Metroidvania Guru. Thanks for joining me for part 7 of our tier list. By this point, I would hope that you'd know how this thing goes, but just to put it out there for everybody, it goes a little something like this. I have a randomized picker, I press the button, it picks the Metroidvanias that I'm going to talk about, and then I talk about them. I do the pros and cons, I do a little bit of spoilers, I make sure to tag those for you just in case you don't want to listen to those spoilers. I give my final thoughts, then I place it onto the tier list. Typically, before I get started, I like to take a look at the tier list and make some amendments, but I was looking at it and I'm actually pretty comfortable where everything is right now, so I'm actually not going to amend anything, although I have been eyeballing those Shantaes. I'm going to be real with you, I've been a Shantae fan for over 20 years. I remember playing it on the Game Boy Color, and so I go back and forth on, do they truly deserve the place that they have right now on the tier list, or is that my bias kind of showing itself? So yeah, I'm going to take a look at those. I'll probably have to replay them a little bit, but I'm not entirely comfortable with moving them yet, but I guarantee they're probably going to move, and it'll probably be moving them down, to be honest. But anyway, let's get this going. If you're watching on the screen, or if you took a look at the description, you already know the 3 games that I'm talking about today. I have the ridiculous fan servicey game Dead School, the follow-up to the absolutely sublime Blasphemous, and the latest in the Metroid series. So I'm pretty excited to talk about these, so let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, our first game is Dead School. This was actually one of the first games that I did for the channel. I'll leave a card up top, you can take a look at it if you want. I actually dived pretty deeply into the game, not just like the mechanics and stuff, but around the author and a bunch of other things. I think it's a pretty interesting video, but could be biased because I made the video. But anyway, Dead School. I think the first thing I want to talk about with Dead School is that it's not really a Metroidvania. It's very close, and because it's so close, I tend to view it as a Metroidvania, but I could definitely see arguments from someone saying that it's not. But let's look at the Metroidvania genre as a spectrum, and I'm going to take a look at it critically now and determine whether or not if it is a Metroidvania. But before I pass judgment on it, let's just talk about it. Starting with the pros, I really like the combat in this game. It's not the greatest, it really doesn't evolve that much, and it can get kind of boring near the end. I remember playing this game, getting near the end, and just hoping it was getting close to being done. This game is actually really long. I can't remember how many hours it took. Probably around 20. I'll double check, but yeah, I think it was around that time. But by and large, the combat's it's fine. If you like to play Muso games, you just go in there and just mindlessly attack mindless AI enemies. If you're down with doing that, you're probably going to be down with the combat in Dead School. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't evolve a little bit. There is a progression system, and we'll get to that. But mostly combat in the game is just, hitting things with your weapon, whether it be like a katana or a bat or like a huge slab of something, I don't even know anymore. Or tearing through everything with a machine gun or a shotgun. There's a chainsaw. And of course, there's bazookas and crap. I said, of course, there's bazookas, as if that's just a given. But yeah, there's bazookas and big old laser cannons. The weaponry in this game gets absolutely nuts. And I guess that brings me to my next pro is the gear. The gear in this game is crazy, legit just nuts. And when I say gear, I'm really just kind of talking about the weaponry, but there's all kinds of other things and modifications that you can do to the weapons that you have. And each weapon is typically dropped by enemies. I mean, you could find vending machines and you could find weapons out and about as you're exploring. And each weapon has this element of randomness to it, which we'll get into. Yeah, it's absolutely fun to collect the gear in this game. Every time I grabbed a new item, I always went right to the inventory whenever I could, whenever it was safe. And I would see, is this new thing stronger for me, or what ridiculous thing does it add? Does it give me a drone or something? It's just really wacky and it's a lot of fun. And I guess that brings us to the progression and leveling system in it. Just like in most action RPGs, there's a leveling system. And the leveling system is based off of, I do believe, it's been a minute since I played the game, but I know you kill enemies, you get EXP, and I'm pretty sure if you do side quests, you get EXP as well. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But anyway, yeah, you get EXP, you level up, and as you level up, you get skill points, and you can put those skill points into specific categories. And these categories could be your melee weapon, they could be your firearm, or it could be something else, maybe more like a general thing. I'm sorry, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I remember a lot from the game, but whatever I mess up, you guys can correct me in the comments. But yeah, you get these skill points, you can allocate them into specific things. I would usually, when I first played Dead School, I focused on melee. But on my second time, you know, that's interesting because the first time I played Dead or School, I just dropped it. I wasn't digging it. The second time I picked it up, I actually fell in love with the game. And I wonder if it's because I started leveling up my firearms instead of my melee. Because the first time I did melee, and that's all I focused on. But then I just wasn't digging the game. But when I started my second run, because I was like, man, I really want to play this game and I want to give it a fair shake, I started dumping stats into my firearms as well, and I just found that helped a lot with all the waves of enemies that you'll be going up against. Yeah, there's a lot of enemies and a lot of zombies you'll be killing. You'll be getting EXP for killing them. You'll level up, you get skill points, put those skill points, allocate them just the way you want. And of course, you can make your attack stronger. You can have, I think, like larger magazines. You can get yourself more HP. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it's good enough to keep you moving, you know? Like, I want to kill all these enemies just so I can level up to get the next thing. And I like that aspect in video games. My next pro is the randomness. And what I mean by that is there's just so many items that you can collect in this game. And no two items are ever going to be the same. Yeah, you can get like the same like broken pipe as a weapon, but one pipe may have a specific attribute to it while another has a completely different attribute. And so as you're acquiring all this gear, you're going to be hitting your menu a lot to check on it. And you'll find all kinds of things like, okay, this item is strong, but this item, it's stronger and it gives me defense and lets me, I don't know, have better dodge or something like that. And then you get these cogs, and you can take these cogs and you can modify your weapons. And when you do that, even the modifications are random. It's almost like a slot machine. It triggers that addicting thing in your brain that makes you just want to keep doing stuff. I'm not the most articulate and intelligent person when it comes to talking about stuff like that, but that's how it feels. It feels like I'm gambling when I play this game. And it just feels so sweet when you get that modification, you put it in there and it gives you like a really amazing upgrade to your weapon, and you're just like, yes, that's what I wanted. But yeah, the randomness in this game, take it or leave it. I know a lot of people probably don't dig that, but I absolutely do. My next pro is the plot. Actually, I'll just put both these pros together. I have plot and I have funny, like the game is like humorous. I put these in the pros because this game legit has an amazingly competent plot and story arc. Like, narratively, this might be the strongest game on this list. That could be a hot take, but just know that the person who wrote this game's narrative actually has like mangas under his belt. And I can't recall his name, but I think he does like hentai as well, so be careful if you look that up. But yeah, for real, this guy, he has some storytelling chops, and you see it in this game. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything about the plot, but it really is just, it starts out really stupid and weird. But even though it starts out silly, like, it's a girl who has lived underground. I think they've been underground for like 3 generations or something like that. They have not seen the surface world because mutants or zombies have taken over. And her grandmother talks about school. And so she's like, you know what? I'm going to the surface and we're going to school, baby. And that's the game. And as stupid as that is, the writing in the game actually makes you root for her, because it's such a stupid, it's seemingly stupid motivation. But if you take a look at like some of our favorite like stories, a lot of their motivations are kind of silly or just not like super like serious. Like, look at Dragon Ball Z. What's Goku's? He just wants to be the strongest fighter in the world, right? And that's it. And everyone loves Goku. Or just take a look at Chainsaw Man with Denji. His motivation initially was he wanted to touch a boob or get laid. And that story ends up being really cool. And I'm not saying that Dead or School is on the, same level as Dragon Ball Z or Chainsaw Man. But what I am saying is don't be so dismissive of the main character's silly motivation. The writer behind it knows what he's doing and does a really great job. And like I said, this game has like legit story arcs. So we're talking like if you were to like do Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and you're taking a look at conflict and rising action and falling action, this game just, it lays the tension on, it lays it on thick, and it keeps you in the conflict. It really is a really good story. And as dire as a lot of the atmosphere is, because it's just you're underground, you live in the subways in Tokyo, and you're just surrounded by mutants and everyone's dying, and it's a pretty bleak atmosphere. There's some humor in the game. Now, I'm not going to say it's the funniest game in the world or anything like that, but I did appreciate the fact that they try to throw in some humor here and there to lighten the mood. So yeah, this is a silly game with a silly premise, but I think the writer did a really good job at creating an enthralling narrative. Maybe enthralling isn't the word. Maybe just competent is what I meant. but it's certainly something I didn't expect, and I think you'll be surprised as well. All right, moving on to the cons. I don't have a whole lot of cons here. I mean, I could go into a lot about what makes this game, you know, not the best, but I'll keep it kind of general because, I mean, again, I got a video of this. If you want to really dive deeply into it, I talk about it in that video. But as for the cons that I want to talk about on the tier list, I have like 3 that I'm going to hit. One is the game's general jankiness. This game is broken in a lot of ways. Nothing game breaking. Like, I don't remember any times when the game crashed or I got soft locked or anything like that. But there was a lot of just like weird jankiness going on. Like sometimes weapons would glitch out, and instead of being like a shotgun in my hand, it would be like a purple square. Our enemy AI would just be like ridiculously stupid. Or I would like clip through the ground sort of, and so I couldn't do specific moves because it didn't register the ground properly or something like that. And sometimes hitboxes are a little weird. It's tough to talk about all the jankiness like generally, but just know that the game it needs a little bit more polish. And I would imagine looking at any gameplay or even looking at the trailer, you can be like, oh wow, this is a little janky. And I think that jankiness gets accentuated because your character is and I can't remember her name. Yeah, I apologize, but your main character, she's at 2D. And everything else is 2.5D around her, and it's not my favorite look, but it is what it is. I mean, I remember there's even like cutscenes in the game that are like 3D rendered, pre-rendered cutscenes. Like they look like straight out of the 90s. They're pretty bad, very poorly compressed. But yeah, this game it needs a lot more polish than it got. And you know, even in my long form video on it, I talked about how the jankiness, even though I have it as a con here. It's kind of endearing because this game, it feels like a passion project. A lot of people got together. They were not 100% competent in everything that they were supposed to do, but they did it anyway because they just wanted to get this out because they just loved it so much. And I feel like you can feel that as you play this game. And so yeah, the jankiness, it's a con, but at the same time, I don't think it's that bad. But I'll let you be the judge. You know, I mean, everyone views things differently, obviously, right? Anyway, moving along, the next con I have here is the elephant in the room, and that's the fan service in this game. Most likely people listening to this know what I mean when I say fan service, but I just want to make it clear, at least to my understanding, fan service is when they're like, you see it a lot in anime, and this game is very anime-esque. And what they do in anime for fan service is they show off the girls. And I think you know what I mean when I say they show off the girls. And so, does this game show off the girls? Yeah, it does. Not as much as you would imagine, considering I told you already that the author actually like draws hentai. But the fan service in this game is it never gets lewd for one, and 2, it's actually there's not a whole lot of it. I think there are like 2 still frames that they have in the game where they show a couple of women scantily clad, and even then it's not that bad. But I definitely wouldn't want like my wife or my daughters walking in on me when I'm doing that or playing that part. And then there's this weird mechanic where if your main character loses enough HP, her clothes rip. And when her clothes rip, it's like a desperation mode, and so a lot of her stats increase. And there's like a brief cutscene of like her clothes ripping, and you can see a little bit of cleavage and a little bit more skin. It's right in your face, but it's brief. Other than that, I can't really think of any other fan servicing moments. But yeah, the fan service is there. Just know it's actually pretty minimized and never gets lewd, and it's really not that bad. But I put it in the cons because it's just I don't know, it's weird. But hey, if you dig it, that's fine. And then the last con I have here is that it's not really a Metroidvania. It's so close to being a full-fledged Metroidvania, but it lacks the ability gating. What you start with is what you get throughout the entire game, mobility-wise. So you're not upgrading your movement in any way as you play. The game is also very linear. It's pretty much level-based, and there's really no need for backtracking. Now, you can backtrack, and the reason you would do that is so you can find gear or optional challenges. Other than that, backtracking isn't necessary. There's one part where you have to revisit a level, but like I said, this game is level-based. It'll take you there regardless. So any backtracking you have to do, you do it because you're trying to find stuff. So yeah, it's not really a full-fledged Metroidvania, but it does a lot of things that a Metroidvania should do. And so really, I have it more of like an honorary Metroidvania because it is so close. And that's it for the cons. Like I said, there's much more to talk about, but I just, kept it at general jankiness. And normally I'd move on to the spoiler section, but there's really nothing to spoil here. There's not a whole lot to talk about. There's only one ending in the game. The game's very linear, and I really don't want to get into the plot. I mean, again, I have a video already. You can watch that. I think I talk about the plot a little bit in there. But yeah, there's really nothing to talk about in the spoiler section here, so I'll save you from that. And so my final thoughts on Dead or School. I personally like this game a lot, and I could see why people wouldn't like it, and so it's tough for me to recommend to people, especially because it's not a full-fledged Metroidvania, but there is a lot to like here. Just know the exploration in it, all of it's optional, and as long as you follow the quote-unquote critical path, you're going to get through this game. And again, there's only one ending in it, and it's a off-the-wall, goofy ride the entire time. And with that being said, where would I place Dead or School on this tier list? Well, because it doesn't really hit the Metroidvania criteria very well, I'm not going to put it up high, but I'm not going to put an F because it does a lot of good and does a lot of things that a Metroidvania should do. It does it, relatively well, but not well enough to really be super high. So I would say not F tier. I'm comfortable with D. I'll put it under Iconoclasts, because at least Iconoclasts is a full-fledged Metroidvania. And I put it above Night Witch because Dead or School is at least a platformer, and it's above Greek because I hate Greek. That game, ugh. But there you go. I'm pretty comfortable with that. It hurts a little bit because, like I said, I actually enjoy this game a lot. And I know from a technical aspect, it's not a good game, but I still have a lot of fun with it. I find it to be a guilty pleasure. And I think if you guys approach it with a more open mind, understand that the fan service is pretty minimal, and you're cool with the ridiculous runtime. Like, again, I think it's like 20 hours. It overstays its welcome for sure. But yeah, it's a decent game. I like it, and it kind of hurts putting it so low on the list, but I think that's fair. D for Dead or School. Oh, baby, Blasphemous 2. What a very good game this is. My pros are long. I'll probably consolidate them as I'm talking about Blasphemous 2, but just, yeah, this is a very good one. If you've played Blasphemous 2, then you know it's very good. So anyway, let's just get into it. Blasphemous 2, why? The first pro I have here is combat. I love the combat in Blasphemous 2. The attacks feel visceral, the blocking and the parrying just feels great, and the added mobility to the Penitent one just makes the fight way more interesting because now it puts positioning in your favor. You can double jump, you can dash, all kinds of stuff. It's a whole lot of fun. And what adds to that fun is my next point, and that is weapons. The Penitent one is no longer bound to just a mea culpa. Now he's got like a mace, he's got a rapier and dagger, and he's got a sword. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses, as in like one is the strongest, which is the mace, and then we have the fast one, which is the rapier and the dagger, and then of course we got the middle ground being the sword. And you can swap them on the fly and do some really cool things with it. Each one has its own special abilities, and each one adds a different traversal skill. Overall, the weapon system in this game is just outstanding. The weapons don't only help with combat, but they also help with exploration. It's just a really, really neat idea. And they pulled it off very well. And that brings me to my next point, and that's its Metroidvania-ness. Now, throughout my discussion of Blasphemous 2, I'm going to do my best not to compare it to the first one. But if you were to compare Blasphemous 2 to the first Blasphemous, you'd notice that Blasphemous 2 is much more of a Metroidvania, at least a traditional Metroidvania, than its predecessor. And a lot of that has to do with traversal abilities and a more robust progression system. You really feel like you're getting more powerful in this game compared to the first Blasphemous. So yeah, I get a lot of people, they'll tell me that Blasphemous 1 isn't a Metroidvania, and I can see why they would say Blasphemous 1 isn't a Metroidvania. Obviously, I don't agree with them. If you watch my Blasphemous video, you'll know that it's a secret Metroidvania, if anything. And isn't that what Metroidvania nuts like? Secrets? And so, yeah, if you're interested in me arguing Blasphemous's Metroidvania-ness, I'll put a card up top, you can take a look at that. But there's no denying that Blasphemous 2 is a full-fledged traditional Metroidvania. And I made a video on Blasphemous 2 as well. There's a card. Check it out if you want. And that brings us to our next pro, and it says mobility, platforming, level design. So I talked about the traversal skills that the Penitent One has in this game that he lacked in the first. And because of these new traversal skills, the mobility of the Penitent One adds a lot to the level design and just the platforming challenge all around. And I think they did a very good job on the level design in this game. And I think that brings us to the next point, and that's biome diversity. Because the biomes were so diverse in this game, meaning like you have like this underwater castle, and then you got this I don't even know what it was, but it was like a dungeon where you can like jump through the fountains and then it's upside down and stuff. And then there's like this fiery one and just all kinds of interesting stuff going on. The one with the sand, right? Because they were able to make the Penitent One so mobile this time around, they were able to make the biomes very diverse and just go nuts with the level design. And so I really appreciated that, and I think that that's a very big plus on Blasphemous 2's side. And I guess the next natural place to talk about on Blasphemous 2 is its map in general. And really, it's not so much the map, it's really the openness and non-linearity that map presents to us. So much like in the first game, the beginning part of the game is very open. They give you 3 objectives, they put it on the map, and you can go to any 3 that you want. It doesn't really matter in what order you do it. But then once you do those 3 objectives, then another section will open up, and then you go there, and then the game becomes more linear after that. But even though the second half of the game is more linear, there's still a lot you can do off the beaten path. And so at no point in Blasphemous 2 did I ever feel like, oh, I'm stuck doing this one thing. Like there was always like 1,000 things to do. And wow, wouldn't you know it, that brings me to my next point here, and that there's lots to find and the exploration is excellent. I absolutely had a blast exploring things in Blasphemous 2. There was just so much to find, whether it be NPCs or marks of martyrdom or just I don't even know, like random things. There's just so much to gather. And so exploration was always eventful, always rewarding, and always fun. And since I brought up the marks of martyrdom, I guess I'll go to the next point, and that's the progression in this game. In Blasphemous 2, you get these marks of martyrdom, which are like skill points. You can get them by killing enemies or killing bosses or finding them. I mean, they're all over the place. Anyways, you get these marks of martyrdom, and then you can place them into skill trees. Each weapon has its own skill tree, and these skill trees are tiered, and they open up as you find some things as you explore the game. And so yeah, you find these marks of martyrdom, you put them into the weapon skills that you want, and you improve and you open up and unlock a lot more combat potential. It's, for lack of a better word, freaking awesome. And my next point here says rewarding backtracking. That's kind of redundant because I talked about the excellent exploration, but yeah, the backtracking in this game, if you want to like whenever I would get a new skill, like, you know, traversal skill, I loved backtracking because I was like, oh, yeah, I remember going this place or that place, or, oh, I couldn't get that, but now I bet you I can. And yeah, like that, when a Metroidvania does that to your brain, that's how you know it's a good Metroidvania. You get that skill and you're like, I'm going to backtrack the heck out of this map now. There are some Metroidvanias where I just wait until I get a bunch of different skills before I go and do backtracking. But for the really excellent ones that really like steep me deep into the game, I will backtrack as soon as I get a new skill because I know I'm going to be rewarded, and Blasphemous 2 definitely is very rewarding with this backtracking. Next point I have here is the altars and the secret synergies. So yeah, there's many ways that you can build up your Penitent One in this game. Like in the first game, you had the rosary beads. They come back in Blasphemous 2. And then also in Blasphemous 2, we talked about how you can level up your weapons skill trees. Then there's this altar that I guess the Penitent One carries on his back, and he puts these altar pieces in them, which are these little statues. And those statues do a bunch of different things. They can increase damage, they can increase resistances, they can do a bunch of stuff. But one of the cool things they do is that they actually have these secret synergies. So if you couple 2 specific altar pieces together, it could do something very strange. I can't think of a bunch of them off the top of my head, but it could be like additional damage to your mace, or it could turn your mace's fire into miasma damage or something like that. Just these altar pieces and the secret synergies, they're really cool to experiment and find. My last 3 pros can pretty much be put together, and that's presentation, enemy designs, and atmosphere. So the presentation in this game is absolutely fantastic. I mean, just look at it. If you played Blasphemous 1, Blasphemous 2, it looks even better. And then the enemy designs are freaking fantastic. Not so much the bosses, but I'll get to that in the cons. But yeah, like the enemy designs, you know, they're just these tortured, twisted mess of things, and it's fun to take these things out of their misery. They all look gross, and they all look great. And of course, the atmosphere is really, really good in this game. The music this time around, I think, is just absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. And yeah, it continues the miracle and the torture and, you know, all of that. greatness that we liked from the first game. It continues it here. So, yep, presentation, enemy designs, atmosphere, really, really good. All right, moving on to the cons. I alluded to one already, and that was the bosses. I didn't really care much for the bosses in this game. They weren't bad, and there were a few that were very fun to fight. Mainly, I did not like the design of the bosses in this game. There were some good ones, but mainly they were just like this team of evil that it seemed like the penitent ones, you know, and they all looked very similar, right? They're humanoid, they got the pointy hat and, you know, whatever. They just didn't seem very inspired. Again, I'm not saying they're bad, and I said I wasn't going to compare Blasphemous 2 to Blasphemous 1, but if I did compare Blasphemous 2 to 1, I don't think anyone would disagree with me if I said the bosses in Blasphemous 1 were just so much cooler looking. But putting Blasphemous 1 aside, 2's bosses, they're okay, they're fine, but they just they didn't have the imagination that I wanted to see that I was used to in the franchise. The next thing here are the cutscenes. I talked about the presentation, and I liked the presentation, but I really didn't like the cutscenes in this game. Do not get me wrong, they look good, and I think even in my video I said this, but basically they look too good. I liked it better when it was pixel art and it was like a little grimy, grungy kind of thing. The new cutscenes, they're like very clean and pretty, and it doesn't mesh well with the actual gameplay. And I know that's not uncommon to have the cutscenes be completely different than the actual gameplay. I mean, take a look at Final Fantasy VII, right? The original one. But yeah, anyway, you know, the cutscenes are fine. I just didn't think they were the greatest. Or at least they didn't complement the rest of the game's graphics. My next con is the side quest variation. Most of the side quests in this game were just like, you know, find stuff, bring it back to town, talk to NPC, get thing, right? It wasn't terrible, and I know a lot of people like that. I like that, but I just wanted some more variation. There is one side quest in the game, which I will talk about in the spoilers, that I thought was really, really good, but like 99% of the side quests in this game are just go find a thing, bring it back, get a reward. Again, not bad. I just wanted more. I'm selfish like that, I guess. My next con is the true ending. I'll talk about it in more depth in the spoiler section, but the path to the true ending in this game really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me, and figuring it out was something that I would never have done. I had to look it up. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any clues to help you out. I know for a fact there are, but I just think there could have been more to help players connect the dots. I don't know. It was creative, and I thought it was cool. I just wish I could have figured it out myself. And maybe I could have. Maybe there's something I missed in the lore or some item I didn't pick up and read or something like that. But like I said, we'll get into that in the spoilers. I'm going to move on now to my last con, and that's that this game has no progression measurement system. At least not at launch. I played the game at launch, and there was no way to figure out how my progression was going in the game. And what I mean by that is specifically those stupid babies. Early on in the game, you find an NPC and he asks you to find the babies, his brothers or something like that. And so throughout the course of the game, you're going to find these babies flying around and you free them out of their cages. I think there's 32 to find. So there is a measurement in that, oh, I know how many I need to find, but I don't know where I need to find them. And so no progression measurement may not be what I want to name this con. But the reason I named it that is because sometimes you play Metroidvania, you go to the map, you take your cursor, you put it over the biome, and then there's like a percentage, right? And it says you have, 90% of all items in this specific area. To my knowledge, at launch, when I played Blasphemous 2, there is nothing like that. And having something like that would have been so helpful. Because by the time I got to the last biome in the game, I was missing one baby. And so I was forced to scour the entire map in order to find the one baby I couldn't find. Of course, in the end, I cheated and I looked up some guide and it showed you where all the babies were. But it would have been awesome if there was something in game that would have been like, hey, there's a baby in this biome, or there's a percentage of items that you still need to find in this biome. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments and there is something like that now, but when I first played the game, that didn't exist. Anyways, that's it for the cons. It was a very short list because Blasphemous 2 is such a great game, but done with the cons, we're going to move on to spoilers now. All right, spoilers. So I want to first talk about getting that true ending. All right, so to get the true ending, you have to find 4 very specific altar pieces. And then you have to take those altar pieces and put them in very specific slots on your altar. If you put them in the right slot, they turn gold. Once you have all 4 golden and in the right slot, then there's a door that'll open for you. Then you go in that door and you burn the 4 altar pieces, and then you get, whatever MacGuffin that you get that lets you get the true ending when you beat the game. It's actually very, very cool. I appreciate it. I liked it a lot. But like I said earlier, I just wish there was something that would have helped me connect the dots sooner. Now, I know I've talked to some people and they were close to figuring it out themselves because they accidentally turned the altar pieces gold, but they said even then they just had to look it up in the end. And I know each one of these specific altar pieces has a piece of lore in it, so you go and you read the item description and it gives you some hints. And I don't know, I don't think those hints were good enough, but maybe you do. You can let me know in the comments. But I don't really have an answer to how to make it easier to figure out. Typically, I like to give solutions or recommendations on how to fix something, but I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. The only thing I can think of is, they were called the envoys, right? The 4 altar pieces, they were called envoys. And so anyway, if you got an envoy and you put it in the correct spot and it turned gold, it should make you really powerful or do something really, really good for you, right? That way you're like, oh man, I really want to find these gold pieces, right? But to my knowledge, at least my recollection, when they turn gold, nothing really happens. They stay the same, like they don't add any different synergies. And so maybe that might help, where it's like, okay, I have these envoys. Ooh, I got a gold one now. Wow, look at that. It boosts my damage up by a ridiculous amount. Wow. And so then it would make more sense, or at least thematically or narratively, to go to that door, and then when they ask you to burn it, you're like, I don't want to burn it. These things are great. Like, getting all 4 golden altar pieces could make you like incredibly OP. Maybe not OP, but it does something. You know what I'm saying? Like, mechanically, just makes you really, really good, or does something that you really, really don't want to lose, right? And so now going into the final boss, right? You no longer can use their abilities as a crutch because you got to burn them. And I think that might have worked much better than how it works now. Because now you just randomly put the golden pieces where they need to go, and you don't get anything for doing that. You put all 4 there, the door will open, and then you just kind of throw them into the fire, and yay, right? But if you have the gold pieces and they do something really awesome, then of course narratively you got to sacrifice that, and we understand how sacrificing something and being a martyr in this game, how that plays out, right? Like, it just nails the themes. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. Like I said, I do these off the top of my head, but I think that would go a long way with, one, giving players a hint that these things are important, even though I guess the gold kind of does that, but given like mechanical advantages would be great too. And 2, it reinforced kind of like the sacrificing that the penitent one has to do, because like now I got to get rid of these altar pieces that are making me awesome, right? But anyway, I'm just kind of rambling. I think you get the point. But yeah, I think that would go a long way in making this true ending, or at least a path to the true ending, more impactful. My next thing in spoilers here is that the endings in this game suck. I guess saying they suck is a little like strong, but I didn't find any of them to be like interesting, and especially the true ending. Like, of the 2 endings in this game, the original, or the bad ending, or whatever you want to call it, that was actually more interesting than what happens in the true ending. And I know there may be some people out there that's like, oh no, I like the true ending because he ascends to heaven, or the cradle of life, or whatever they call it, right? And you get to see the people from the first game, and he's with his friends, and blah, 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 right? And yeah, maybe that is cool. Maybe you do like that, to finally see the penitent one be put to rest. And so I guess it's not a bad ending, or at least it doesn't suck. But I don't know, it just didn't work out for me. Maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't, I don't know. But again, that the bad ending, that was much more interesting. Like, he merges with that, devotion incarnate, or whatever it's called, and then they become the 3rd psalm or whatever, and then they go into the sky, and then things are going to continue being terrible. That ending, that sucks. Not that it's a bad ending, but that's just a terrible fate to happen to all these people. But at least it was far more interesting. I don't know, that's subjective. You can let me know what you think. But I'll move on now to the last spoiler I have here, and this is a pro, and it has to do with that one cool side quest. Remember how I said the side quests were pretty derivative? There was just not a whole lot of variation. Go find a thing, bring the thing back to town, give it to the NPC, get rewarded. Well, there's one side quest that actually doesn't follow that at all. And I don't even know what to call this side quest, and I'm sure I can look it up, but it has to do with finding that letter that curses you. And so the letter gives you instructions to do things, and so you do those things, and something will happen, right? So the first thing it asks you to do, I think, is like find like a mirror and kneel in front of it or stare at it or something like that. You do that, then the next thing it has you do is go to stand where this thing was bellowing. So you do that, and then it asks you to walk underneath a skull or something. I don't know. I'm missing a step, but anyway, so it has these really interesting and weird and odd steps that you got to do, and it's cool because it challenges your observation, right? So anyways, it culminates with you having to like go to this one specific cliff and then just like falling off. And when you do that, it gives you the achievement. It says quest complete, and then you get some item. I can't even remember what it is, but that's not the point. The point is that it was a cool side quest that was fun to figure out. And I wish there were more side quests like that in Blasphemous, but like I said, a lot of the side quests are pretty samey. Like even the one with the old lady, right? That's like in her deathbed. She's like, find my sisters or daughters or whatever. You go there, you blow out their candles, then you go back to her, and then you got to do a fight, and then you get a reward. So they're pretty much all the same. But that particular one with the letter stuck out, and I really liked it. All right, my final thoughts on Blasphemous 2. Absolutely outstanding game, fantastic Metroidvania, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It's challenging, the platforming's fantastic, the atmosphere is just creepy and weird, and the exploration is just so rewarding. Really, there's not a facet of this game that I don't think is rewarding. The combat, platform, the atmosphere, exploration, all of it, it's so much fun. So with that being said, where does Blasphemous 2 go on this tier list? Let me go ahead and grab it down here. And I'm not going to put it in B. I'm just dropping it for a second. I think it's a solid A. Yeah. Gosh. Oh, I'm thinking about it. Sorry, it's going through my head. All right, I'm putting it there. There it is. Yep. A tier underneath Astalon. That hurt my brain. All right. I'm kind of on the spot here. I may stop and take a look at that, but right now I'm comfortable with putting it over Symphony of the Night, but below Astalon. And I know some of you may not like that placement. That's fine. Let me know if I'm missing something or if there's something else I need to consider. But I'm pretty comfortable now with putting it there. You may be curious as to why I've placed Blasphemous 2 below Blasphemous 1. And I think the best way to answer that is that Blasphemous 1 nails and excels at everything a Metroidvania should. And I know that even seems contradictory because Blasphemous 2 is much more of a traditional Metroidvania than Blasphemous 1. And I think that's my first kind of ding on Blasphemous 2. I think it just played things a little too safe. Like I alluded to earlier, Blasphemous 1 is a secret Metroidvania. It hides that it's a Metroidvania, and because it does that, it hides this completely secret layer to its gameplay and world. And that is just such a fantastic move. Blasphemous 2, it pretty much puts everything out on the table for you. And I understand if you like that more than Blasphemous 1. And I cannot deny that Blasphemous 2, gameplay-wise, is the better and more fun game to play. But I'm not ranking them as video games. As pure video games, I think Blasphemous 2 knocks it out of the park, at least compared to Blasphemous 1. But as Metroidvanias, I have to give it to Blasphemous 1. Even though its gameplay and combat isn't as great as Blasphemous 2, its environments, its atmosphere, its creativity, and its willingness to take the Metroidvania formula and twist it in such a way that literally tricks people into thinking it's not a Metroidvania. It just blows my mind. And so yeah, Blasphemous 2, fantastic game, and I can absolutely see why someone would like it more than one, and I may like it more than one. I haven't decided yet, but I do like Blasphemous 2 a lot. Again, gameplay-wise, it is superior. But to hit that S tier, you have to hit every aspect of a Metroidvania with a high level of competence and execution. And I feel Blasphemous 1 does in fact hit those aspects excellently. On the other hand, Blasphemous 2, though it does hit Metroidvania aspects very, very well, I really do think it dropped the ball on the true path to the final ending. Now, will Blasphemous 2 get DLC? Perhaps. I don't know, and I don't think the devs have communicated anything yet. But if Blasphemous 2 does get DLC, I'll reevaluate it and adjust accordingly. Because remember, Blasphemous 1 got 3 DLCs, and that final DLC, the Wounds of Eventide, that's what took Blasphemous 1 to S tier for me. Will that happen for Blasphemous 2? I hope so, but as it stands right now, I think Blasphemous 2 is a solid A tier game. Mid to high, probably high. Okay, and our final game for the episode is Metroid Dread. I got Metroid Dread at launch, and I remember really liking it. I fell head over heels in love with the game, but having said that, there is a lot to this game that I did not like as well, especially when it comes to the Metroidvania-ness of it, and we'll get into it, that's why we're here, but I just want everyone to know that I do in fact love this game, but I fully intend to kind of rip it apart now. Like, I'm not really going to rip it apart, but I am going to be critical of it. But just know that it's been a while since I've played this game. I played it at launch, probably beat it in like a few days, and really haven't touched it since. I put it back in before this episode just so I could, get a feel for the game again, and so I could speak, towards it. But yeah, largely my feelings haven't changed on the game. I do like it. It's a very good video game, but we got to talk about its Metroid-ness, if you will, or its Metroidvania-ness. Anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's just start with the pros. First pro is the combat. I don't think anyone who's played this game would say anything negative about the combat in it. Shooting stuff, smacking stuff with your arm cannon, moving all over the place with all the different, traversal skills that Samus gets in this game. It is a heck of a lot of fun, especially how you can, do precision aiming. That's so cool. And obviously, parrying is never not fun. Unless you suck at it like I do, but even I could get the hang of it. It wasn't too bad. So yeah, I loved the parrying in this game. But yeah, combat, absolutely fantastic. Easily the best in the series. I love it that much. And yeah, don't really have anything negative to say about the combat. It was fantastic. Next pro I have are the bosses. I thought the bosses in this game were incredible. I think they really accentuated everything about the combat. And I think the difficulty's there too. This is a pretty steeply challenging game, if I remember correctly, which I think I do. And every boss challenged you in some way, especially if they would try to make you utilize whatever your latest skill was and turn the boss fights into sort of a puzzle, but not always. But yeah, these bosses, they kept you on your toes and they were really, really fun to fight. Great designs too. I especially liked that one boss that was like underwater and then you had to like do a bunch of different things. This was the puzzly aspect I was just talking about. But yeah, you had to do a bunch of things and use your grappling hook to shoot up onto the magnet thing where you had to use your spider grip or whatever it's called, and then you had to like go over it and hit this other thing, and then you can go down and actually fight it proper because you drain the water. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It challenged your mind and it challenged your reaction time. I mean, it was kind of dirty that they didn't give you the gravity suit before the fight, but I understand why they didn't. It, added to the challenge, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of bosses I can just go on and on about. I know there's Ravenbeak, we'll talk about him, but man, that was a good boss fight. But yeah, let's move on. Talk about the story for a second. I thought this story was pretty good. I definitely have it in the pros. It's not going to blow your mind and it's not front and center, but what they have there works really well. It continues the story of Samus, which we hadn't seen a proper continuation in, I want to say 20 years, could be wrong. But yeah, it's been a while. Like, this is the direct follow-up to Fusion. And so up to this point, the Metroid games we've been getting, they've been prequels or whatever. But yeah, Dread is a continuation of Samus' saga, and it's pretty good. Again, it's not going to blow your mind, but what was given to us works really, really well. The next point I have here is map recontextualization. I'm going to be honest with you, I said recontextualization in one take, and I'm really happy with myself. Anyway, what do I mean by that large word? Basically, Metroid Dread, it likes to take its biomes and change them as the game progresses. And it changes them to do some really fantastic environmental storytelling. I'll say this, I am fairly certain that the Metroid franchise, they're the ones who created this kind of map recontextualization. I remember seeing it in Super Metroid, and I talked about it when I put Super Metroid on the tier list. But yeah, the Metroid franchise is the master of recontextualizing the map. And so let me tell you how they do it in Metroid Dread and why it's so effective. Actually, it might not be the best idea to talk about it specifically now. I'll save it for the spoilers. But just know that the map and its biomes, they change as you progress in the game and events happen, and it really does a great job at conveying the story that's being told. And also know that, again, Metroid, they're probably the best at it. So yeah, we'll revisit that in the spoiler section. My next pro here is mobility. Samus has never been known for being the most mobile character in MVs, but this game, it throws that out the window. She moves very fluidly, she's very fast, and she gets so many skills. She gets like an air dash, man. It's absolutely fantastic. It adds to the combat, it adds to exploration, and it just, all in all, feels fantastic. And I guess that brings me to the next pro is there are so many abilities in this game, like so many, like you will probably forget you have some. I know I forgot I had that invisibility cloak one. But yeah, you're going to be enhancing Samus like you've never enhanced an MV protagonist before. She gets so much crap, it's absolutely great. And each thing has a use, so it's not like you're gonna get something and then stop using it. It's just I'm dumb and forgot that I could use that specific thing. And let's take that to the next pro, and that's why I would use the invisibility cloak is for the Emmys. I mean, Emmys, I don't know, I'm tired. But yeah, so the big draw for Metroid Dread is that we have these robots called Emmys, and they will chase you down and they will kill you in one hit. I would say they're like a stalker type enemy, and they sort of kind of are, but they're, you know, kind of sequestered in their own little areas. And obviously, as long as you're not in that area, you don't have to worry about the Emmys. But yeah, you can use the cloaking device to kind of hide yourself from the Emmys. And I always just forgot about it. Now, of course, you can do the cloaking device to get through some ability gating things. Like there's like some, I don't know, like a motion sensor thing. You turn yourself invisible and you can just walk through it. But yeah, had I remembered that I could use these against the Emmys too, maybe I wouldn't have had so much trouble with them. But yeah, the Emmys, whole lot of fun. Added something different to the game, and I know there are probably some people out there that'll tell you these Emmys broke the flow of the game or just didn't feel great or something like that, and I don't agree with that. I'd like to hear those arguments. I just know that I liked it a lot. Anything that adds tension or conflict or really makes me just kind of like, panic. Whenever I feel threatened, I think that is a huge plus for a video game, or at least for a Metroidvania, because there's just something about exploration that just doesn't feel as great if you don't feel threatened at the same time. And these Emmys, they're threatening. For all you out there who've played the game, you know, like the Emmy, they grab you and they kill you in one hit. You get like a fraction of a second to do like a parry against them. These parries, they are not reliable and are basically luck based, but it's absolutely cool when you get these off. So yeah, the Emmys, absolutely loved them. I thought they were really, really cool, and like the way to take them out, that was a whole lot of fun too. It's like this game, it wanted to do so much in it, and it nailed it. Like even when you're fighting the Emmy and you finally get you kill the mother brain looking thing, you get the Omega Cannon, I think is what it's called, and then you have to take out the Emmy as it like crawls towards you. It's pretty creepy. And then like the camera changes and it feels like a whole other game for a second because you gotta like line it up and you gotta like shoot it with like its regular spray shot, right? And then once you peeled back, it's like armor, then you can hit it with the mega shot. There's a lot of risk to this fight and big rewards too. So yeah, I thought the Emmys were fantastic. And I think that goes right into our next pro in that this game is actually pretty difficult. At least I thought it was difficult. There were a few bosses that absolutely handed my butt to me. And a lot of these Emmys, it took me a few tries to actually get through their sections. But the game is very generous with checkpoints and, saving and things like that. So anytime you get killed or die or whatever, you'll start back up and it doesn't feel very punishing. And then the last pro I have here is called enemy design swap, and that's something I'm going to save for the spoilers. Now that I think about it, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, the enemy design in this game is pretty cool. I could probably really dive deeply into all the cool things in it. Like each biome has its own specific enemies, which isn't mind-blowing. You see that a lot in MVs. But the conceit to this game is like you're in a I don't know, like an abandoned space station or science place or something, right? Science lab or whatever. And each biome is literally a biome that they're trying to recreate that you could find out in the natural world. And so I think the game does a really good job at emulating that and creating, creatures that would, belong in these specific biomes. Like there's this one biome, and I'll probably dive into that a little bit more in the spoilers, but there's this one biome that's very verdant. It's like a forest almost. But what makes it cool is that it's again, it's in the science lab, and the science lab has been abandoned for whatever reason. And now this verdant life is starting to just take over. And, you'll love to see it, nature just really just starting to take over, right? And you got these like whale enemies that are like flying in the air. I don't know, it's a forest, but it's a whale enemy. And it's really cool. That's another pro to this game, is that it has a whole lot of different enemies. Like the enemy variety is really, really good. And I know I might have said that was my last pro I wanted to talk about, but I just want to throw in one more pro, and that's the Jaffe room. If you don't know the Jaffe room, take a look at it, but it has to do with David Jaffe and how he basically threw a temper tantrum because he couldn't figure out how to move forward in the game. When I got to the Jaffe room, I didn't have any issues. I thought it was pretty well telegraphed, and I just I'm an MV vet, man. You put me in an MV, I'm going to hit every single wall and every single ceiling. That's just, that's MV enthusiast 101. But yeah, the David Jaffe room, that's a whole lot of fun. And I guess the reason I say it's a pro is because Metroid Dread, even though it was trying to appeal to such a huge mass audience, it didn't mind trying to be as secretive and as hidden as possible. Like, typically when a game tries to hit a mass audience like Nintendo games do, they tend to be much less difficult and cater to really kind of like a lowest common denominator base. And I'm not trying to be rude by saying that, but really it's just what I'm saying with that is like, hey, we usually have these hidden walls and all these secrets and stuff in Metroid games. Let's dial that back so that more people can enjoy it. Metroid Dread didn't do that. I know there were several places in the game where I got legit stuck because I had to figure something out. And it usually had to be with, oh, this was a hidden block that I had to shoot, right? And I know I'm contradicting myself because I was like, oh, an MV enthusiast, I shoot everything. Yeah, well, I'm full of crap. But sometimes I miss some things, and I appreciate it because Metroid Dread, I didn't feel like was lowering its expectations for players. I was like, hey, I'm going to put all this hidden stuff in here. It's your job to find it. And so for a game that's trying to have mass appeal, I thought that took a lot of cojones. And to couple with that, again, the game is difficult. And so you're trying to appeal to this mass audience, and they're like, guess what? Good luck fighting Ravenbeak. He's hard as hell. So yeah, I think Nintendo took a risk with the difficulty on Metroid Dread. Now, apparently, a lot of people did complain about the difficulty, and I guess they patched in difficulty options later. But either way, kudos for sticking to your guns for a little bit. And I am being a little facetious. I don't mind an easy mode. I'm not one of those Dark Souls guys that's like, oh, no easy mode. No, it's perfectly fine. And I think that's going to wrap up the pros. I know I can probably think of a bunch more, but I'm trying to be pretty succinct, and I want to move on to the cons now. So for the first con, I have that this game has a very boxy level design. And I don't know if I talk about this a lot, or maybe I do. I don't know. At least I haven't recorded myself doing it. But when it comes to level design in Metroidvanias, the boxier, the worst, in my opinion. And so what do I mean by a boxy level design? It's really that most of the surfaces that you're going to be working with in the game are going to be parallel or perpendicular to each other. And ultimately, I just think it looks ugly and gross. And granted, I understand this is an abandoned science station or whatever it is, and that this boxy level design complements the level's inorganicness, but I still think there could have been something more to it. Like, just give me some slopes, man. Or just anything that makes this world seem more realistic. Like, the boxier your design, the more video gamey you look like. I don't know. This could be something subjective, but it really just bugs me. I don't like level design like this. Another thing about Metroid Dread's level design is that it's way too claustrophobic. And I get there's probably going to be some people that are like, well, that's kind of the point, And my argument to that is it though? I know Metroid games try to make you feel isolated and alone, and claustrophobic areas can definitely make you feel those ways. But there's so many areas in this game that feel less claustrophobic and more like hallways that were just built too tiny. I don't know. It didn't look good. It didn't feel good to explore. And because everything felt so boxy and so claustrophobic, it felt like I was just moving and going through the motions of exploration as opposed to being in this quote unquote organic exploration mode. And I get that might sound like an oxymoron. Well, you're in an abandoned space station. It's not supposed to be organic, but it's like, well, yeah, but I mean, there are other things that could have been done to make things feel more organic. And all this may be subjective. You may disagree with me, and I'm perfectly cool with that. All I'm saying is I wanted a little bit more variety in the level design. Now, of course, the biomes were fantastic. They were very diverse and looked good. But I'm just saying the second-to-second level design that's supposed to, facilitate platforming, it just didn't excite me. And because of the boxy level design and the claustrophobic hallways, I just didn't feel like exploration was a whole lot of fun. Moreover, and this brings us to my next con, exploration and backtracking in this game was so unrewarding. I don't even know how one could argue that exploration and backtracking is rewarding in this game. Anytime you're going to do any sort of exploration, your reward is going to be a missile tank or maybe an energy tank or something like that. But it's just like you're going to increase your weapon capacity. Is that good? Yeah, to a certain extent. You need a lot of missiles and a lot of bombs and stuff like that to get through some of the more challenging bosses in this game. But at some point, it kind of tops off. Like, I can't remember what my percentage was in this game. It wasn't like too high because I just didn't like to do the backtracking and exploration. I would say I was probably in the 70s. And even at 70% capacity, I was able to take out the entire game. And so why would I want to go and explore and grab everything else unless I'm OCD or something? Or I just wanted to, say, hey, I 100%ed Metroid Dread. But I'm not into bragging rights like that, so it doesn't really, that doesn't register for me. So I didn't want to explore and backtrack in this game. I just kept moving forward the entire time. And I want to reiterate, I do like this game. The combat saves it. I love the combat in it so much. But the exploration didn't really do anything for me. I know I'm not going to find like a charm or a sigil or something cool that I can put on the Samus. I'm probably not going to find some sort of secret ability because all abilities are pretty much progression locked in this game. Sure, there's some sequence breaking, but a great majority of abilities are unlocked when you defeat a boss or you defeat an enemy. So going off the beaten path it wasn't rewarding. But yeah, I feel like I'm just belaboring at this point. I'll just move on to the next con. And my next con is the music's not great. I think a lot of people agree with me on that. The music in it is pretty good, but a lot of it is not original. It was taken from other Metroid games, and so any of the actual original scores or original music in this game, not very solid. I don't know. It's not like I'm going to hold that against Metroid Dread when it comes to placing it on the tier list. I just something that came to mind. Maybe you disagree. Let me know in the comments. So the next con I have here, this one is kind of contradictory to what I was saying about how the game had cojones by keeping the difficulty and the hidden stuff at a higher level. But it's worth talking about, and I have it called section locking. And this happens a lot, especially in the early game to Metroid Dread. And so what I mean with section locking is that this game, it doesn't want you to wander around. There is a very thick layer of fog that is creating an illusion that there's an open world for you here in Metroid Dread. But in actuality, no, you're locked in a lot of sections until you figure out the one solution to move forward. This is a super, super linear game. Yes, there is sequence breaking, I understand that, but by and large, this game is super linear. And so one of the more early examples of this is when you have to blast this wall that's, it's hidden blocks that you can destroy. You don't know you can, you shoot them, then you can advance, right? Well, until you find that hidden wall, you are absolutely stuck. It is the one and only solution to move forward. And so no matter what you do, you're going to, run here, you're going to run there, you're going to run here, and you're going to see that you're stopped. And I remember when this happened to me, I actually opened up my map and started marking my map well, here's an X, here's an X, here's an X. It was helpful, and eventually I did figure it out on my own, I can shoot these blocks over here. There was no indication that these blocks could be destroyed, but again, I'm not going to complain like David Jaffe. I get that's part of the Metroidvania experience. My only issue with it is that it was the only solution to move forward. So not only do we have boxy level design and everything feels very claustrophobic in this game, now they like to lock you into sections. And they do this several times throughout the game. So the question is this smart game design? I mean, Super Metroid did it. Why is it such an issue for Metroid Dread? And I think my answer to that with Dread is that because it does it so often and so early. Super Metroid, you can get 30 minutes to an hour into the game and you visited many biomes until they shut that gate and then you drop down into Brine Star. I'm sorry, it's not Brine Star, I can't, Norfair maybe. But anyways, you make that drop and you can't get back up until you find the freeze beam. Unless you want to sequence break by doing wall jumps, but that's something else. And so yeah, Super Metroid lets you explore a lot and showed you a lot of different biomes and a lot of different stuff before they were like, hey, guess what? Now you're stuck until you figure it out. Metroid Dread, you're 10, 15 minutes into the game and they're already doing these, if not earlier, they're just locking you. And they do it a lot in the beginning. Eventually the game does kind of open up, but like not really. And that brings me to my last con here, and that's that the progression is boring / teleportals. And I don't know, I mean, I can hear people arguing that this game has brilliant level design and progression. And that may be true, but it feels like the antithesis of what a Metroidvania should do. A Metroidvania should not be curated. There should be some sort of openness or some sort of ethereal option out there that I feel like I can do at any given moment. But in Metroid Dread, I always felt like as long as I'm going forward or I'm going straight, the game will basically move me where I need to go. And that's what these teleportals did. Nothing wrong with that system. It was, to me, it felt a little cheap because they were just moving you all over the place. If you look at where these teleportals go, there's like all over the place, and it just felt like a cheap way to do biome connectivity. But it's not a bad way to do it. It just wasn't my favorite. But yeah, Metroidvania Dread feels like it's pushing you along the entire way, as opposed to doing what Metroidvania should do, and that's guide you along with subtle hints or whatever. No, Metroid Dread just feels like it's level design, like claustrophobic hallways. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. I don't know, that's how I felt. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But yeah, I felt like I was always moving forward in this game because the game was pushing me as opposed to guiding. One day I'll do an analysis on this game and I'll be able to articulate my points a little better. But until that time comes, I think this will do for now. And so that brings us to the end of the cons. Now it's time to head into the spoilers. Okay, welcome to the spoilers section of Metroid Dread. I don't really have anything too important to talk about. I have like 3 spoilers I want to talk about, only one of them being really, substantial. But I did want to talk about 1, the final boss, and 2, the ending. And I don't even know what I want to say about the final boss. I just thought Ravenbeak was such a fun boss. The fact that he basically uses the I am your father is super hilarious. Like, I wanted to hate it, but I can't because it's just so funny. And the actual fight itself, if I recall correctly, it has like 3 different phases. And I remember it being so hard, it took me forever to get through phase 1. But like any good boss, you start to, recognize the patterns and you start understanding the counters and things like that. You start going through that first phase finally without getting touched. Then you get to the second phase and you're like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And then you find out there's a third phase and you're like, ah. And so yeah, I just thought that was a really good final boss and really good boss all around. Like, I have nothing negative to say about Metroid Dread's combat. It's so good. It's so cinematic. It's so fun. But that ending, it's not bad. I just think Samus looks absolutely atrocious in that new armor. But it's cool that she's part Metroid and that she's sucking the energy out of people by hitting them with her hand and stuff like that. That's freaking amazing. I cannot wait for the next Metroid to see where this goes. Samus is so freaking cool, and I cannot wait to see what they do with this new power. And this finally brings us to the last spoiler, the one that actually I want to talk about, and that's bringing the X-Parasite back into this game. And though some people might think that's kind of a cheap callback, and maybe it is, I don't know, I liked it, and I imagine fans liked it too. But what made bringing the X-Parasite back so cool is how it did the 2 things I said I was going to bring back up in the spoilers. 1, map recontextualization, and 2, this enemy design swap. And those 2 go hand in hand, because what happens is Samus goes and she unlocks this biome that is in quarantine, it seems. And it's in quarantine because it has the X-Parasite in it. Well, she opens the door and I don't know if she left it open or someone else opened it, but then here we go, X-Parasites going out into all these biomes that were created in the science labs, right? And so now all these biomes that you went through are now getting morphed and transformed into whatever these X-Parasites turn them into, right? They're becoming more disgusting and more warped. And not only do you see that in the map, right, in the biomes, but you see it with the enemies too. Like, there's some of these like more benign enemies that just kind of like crawl around on the floor and the wall. Then you see the X-Parasite version of them, and now they're like spewing fire, as well as looking just different all around. And so it's a really awesome kind of midpoint like change that happens. And they just did it so very well, and it was so refreshing. It brought like a game that I think at that point I was kind of like getting a little bored with, and it's like, bam, it re-energizes it. And like I said earlier, the Metroid games, they are the master of map recontextualization. Okay, my final thoughts on Metroid Dread. First and foremost, I love Metroid Dread. I want to get that out there because I was pretty critical of the game, and there's a lot of people that I speak with that are like, wow, you sound like you actually hate this game. Like, no, I think it might be one of the best in the series. I just think the combat in it is so fun, but I really think it drops the ball on a lot of other things. Now, I can't really fault, I think it was Mercury Steam or whoever made this game. I can't fault Mercury Steam too much because they took the tried and true Metroid formula and just ran with it and decided to really just like, we're going to up it everything by improving the combat, which I thought was a good idea. But I think with their next outing, if they do another Metroid game, they should take a look at some of the Metroidvania contemporaries and see what they can do to catch up with what some of these indie devs are doing with the genre. If I could play a Metroid game where I have a completely customizable Samus with charms and stuff like that, rosary beads and altar pieces, right? If I could play that game and then they would make exploration interesting and man, even have multiple endings or something like that, I think Metroid could be at the top of the Metroidvanias again. But that's never really been Metroid's thing, so we'll just have to see. So my closing thoughts, Metroid Dread, an excellent video game, a really, really good Metroid game, but not the best Metroidvania. That being said, where does it go on the list? Let's see. Well, definitely not F. Definitely not D. What about C? I'm gonna drop it here. I don't think it's C either. I think it's too mean. Comfortable with B, but where in B? This is a tough one. There we go. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Yeah, give it a mid B. Mid B. That sounds good. Again, I like Metroid Dread. I just think that it could be a better Metroidvania. I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot more to say. I think I've said it all. But yeah, I just don't think I hate this game. I absolutely love it. And again, I think it's probably the best Metroid out there. But compared to its contemporaries in the indie scene, it's just not hitting all those things that I want to see in a Metroidvania. And there you go. Another tier list episode in the books. Hope you liked the episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If there's anything I need to amend, let me know about that as well. If you think, hey, I don't like the placement of the games that you just put in this episode, again, let me know in the comments. I am always willing to take a look at stuff and reevaluate. I just need your all's help in the comments. Let me know, hey, I don't like where you placed that. I think you overlooked something, or hey, you didn't consider this, or whatever. Again, I'm just trying to create the perfect Metroidvania tier list, and I think the more feedback, the better. So yeah, leave your feedback in the comments. Happy New Year. Let's make this a great 2024. And I will see you soon with another video. Later.